Florida State's Bobby Bowden is a great many things to the game of college football. His remarkable success, engaging personality, and love of people have made him one of the game's top ambassadors. When you talk about success in college football, Bobby Bowden's name is at the top of the list. Few remember that in 1976, when Bowden arrived in Tallahassee, Florida State had one of the worst football teams in the country. 3 seasons later, he took the Seminoles to within 1 game of a national championship, and Bobby Bowden was just getting started. Florida State is now entrenched among the game's elite in college football. In fact, Bowden is the architect of what might be the preeminent program in the country. His record certainly bears that out. Never before in college football history has a school finished in the top 4 in the country for 12 consecutive seasons. No program has ever come close to FSU's 12 straight seasons of 10 or more wins. Along the way, the Seminoles also won an NCAA record 11 straight bowl games under Bowden. He is by far the winningest coach ever at Florida State. In fact, his win total is greater than the previous 7 Seminole head coaches combined. In Division I football, only 4 names remain ahead of him: Bryant, Stagg, Warner, and Paterno on the all-time win list. But Bobby Bowden has meant a lot more to the game of football than just wins and losses. He has been a proud moral leader, a family man of the first order, a caring disciplinarian, and a voice of reason. As if his character isn't enough, Bowden has also been one of the game's top innovators, bringing a wide-open gambling style to Florida State, which has made the Seminoles one of the most entertaining teams in the country. In this video, Bowden shares some of the secrets of the famed Florida State wide-open attack, along with his philosophy of the game. The emphasis is on receiver play. Bobby's youngest son, Jeff Bowden, is the Florida State receivers coach, and he'll take you through the drills that the Seminoles work on every day in practice. So sit back for the next hour and enjoy learning from one of football's great teachers and a true legend of the game, Bobby Bowden.
I'm very pleased to be involved in this instructional series, Legends of the Game. I've always felt like the receiving part of football is probably one of the biggest changes in offensive football over the last 30, 40, 50 years since I began. When I began coaching, you didn't have wide receivers. Everybody was a tight end and you had 3 running backs. Then they began to split out a tight end, and get, instead of going with a 200-pounder, going with a 160-pounder. And now we play ball games with 2 wide receivers, 3 wide receivers, 4 wide receivers, and some will even play with 5 wide receivers. And what we've done, whereas 50 years ago or 40 years ago, your only threat was your tailback, the runners, the tailback, fullback. They were your only offensive threat because quarterback didn't do anything but hand off and threw very few times. But now, instead of being runners, you've got wide receivers who are actually more dangerous. How many times do you see a runner break for a 70-yard touchdown? And then think how many times do you see a receiver catch a pass for a 70-yard touchdown? A lot more. And so therefore, that's where the game has really opened up since I first started coaching. Instead of pounding, physical, running threats with a little bit of passing to make first downs, now you have wideouts who are capable of scoring on any play from any position on the field. And that's what we're going to talk about in this film. There's no doubt that skill has become a big integral part of football, whereas when football first started, it was nearly all physical, kind of like rugby, just line up and who had the most physical people won the ball game. Then speed began to get involved in it, and then skill. Now the time of skill. If you have great skill, it doesn't make much difference what size you are, if you just got exceptional skill. Some of the best receivers I've seen were short. Some of the best receivers I've seen were not very big. but something they had pretty good, had good speed. And then I think the greatest asset that a receiver needs, other than catching the ball, is great quickness. Florida State University was one of the first colleges or universities in the nation to start throwing the football all over the field. It really had originated back with Bill Peterson back in the late 50s and early 60s, where he put in the pro passing attack at Florida State. Everybody said you can't do it. You can't do it. Colleges can't play like the pros, you know. But Bill Peterson, I remember I was an assistant coach back then. He had 2 wide receivers, he had 2 split backs and a quarterback, and everything was built around the forward pass. And he and John Bridgers at Baylor and the coach at Tulsa, I think his name was Brothers, they were really the three of the schools that first started the professional passing game in college. And I had the privilege of coaching wide receivers. Fred Biletnikoff, who's in the Hall of Fame and was a consensus All-American, I coached him back in those days. And what he brought to the game of football was amazing. I mean, our biggest threat was sitting way out there 17 yards away, you know, instead of a tailback or a fullback like you would normally see in college. There are teams nowadays that do not believe in this. They're strictly physical football teams that are going to whip you physically. But that's kind of the way of life down here at Florida State, where it's hot. And it's less physical to throw the ball than it is to block, run. Remember, if you're going to run the football, you got to knock people out of the way. You got to knock people out of the way. In passing game, you don't have to knock people out of the way. You just stand in front of them and make them run around you, and then try not to let them run around you, you know? And so it's a little simpler, we feel like, and it is less physical, but we think your potential to score a lot of points are much higher if you're going to split people out and utilize wide receivers and an excellent passer. Football at all levels kind of feeds off of the level below. In other words, college football feeds off of pro football. High school football feeds off of college ball. Junior high school and middle school football feeds off the high school football. And we all kind of try to reach that top pinnacle, you know. And the thing about the passing game, wideouts, using a good quarterback that can throw the football instead of run it, and great wide receivers is, you don't have to be as physical. You know, I think maybe with, if you have inferior physical material to the people you're playing, you better get a passing game going, because if you don't, they're going to squish you. They're going to line up and just smash you if they're physically better than you and you try to out-physical them. So anyway, the passing game loosens that up. Now just for instance, let's say that you got 11 players on the football team. All right, let's say you got 10 of them inside, you know, 2 tight ends, 2 tackles, 2 guards, a center, quarterback, fullback, tailback. Then you got 1 great wide receiver over here. Put 1 great wide receiver over here. If they move 1 man out there to take him, and your guy's great, protect your quarterback and throw to him, you got a mismatch right there, you know. And so, okay, now they move 2 people out there to take him. What if they move 2 out there? Now you've got them outnumbered in here. See, they're using 9 men in here, and you got 10 men in here. And so then okay, let's put another wide receiver out there. We get a mismatch out there, you know. Now then, if they play one-on-one and your guy's better, we'll just take the football. Let's get the ball to him. Now they put 2 out there. See, so now you got 2 over here on this guy and 2 on this guy, and they've taken 4 men to take care of 2. So now you have them outnumbered in the running game, and might give you a chance to catch up with any physical superiority they might have. Now I've been talking about the passing game and about throwing and catching. It's not as simple as it has sounded. Somebody has got to teach it. Now here at Florida State we have Jeff Bowden, who's been on our staff since 1994. He coaches the wide receivers at Florida State. He played wide receiver. And his job is to teach these young men the techniques of, number 1, a good stance, number 2, how to take off and get into the routes, 3, all the aspects of a route, you know, and then how to catch the football once it is thrown. And let me from a father standpoint, tell you, on catching the football, it starts with the eyes. People think you catch with your hands. You know, no, you catch with your eyes. If you can't see the ball, you simply can't catch it. Now, if you don't believe me, you take your best receiver and you blindfold him. Just blindfold him. Then stand 10 yards away and pitch him the ball and let me see if he can catch it. Can't do it if you can't see it. So just remember, in catching the ball, I got to see it, I got to catch it, I got to tuck it, I got to cover it. Now, Jeffrey will go into these aspects of catching a football.
Thanks, Dad, for the introduction. Wide receiver play here at Florida State. I'd like to take the next 10-15 minutes to take you through the warm-up routine that we start with each day in practice. To play wide receiver, it does not only require speed or quickness, but it requires great fundamentals, and that a lot of the emphasis in our practices each day is based on fundamentals. I'd like to introduce Jason Floyd. Former wide receiver here at Florida State, played for 4 years, was a great asset to our program. The first thing I'd like to do is go over just the warm-up that the receivers will do on their own as they walk onto the practice field. Before practice begin, I may be involved as a coach in some special teams work and not able to supervise my players. So they know that when they come out on the field, the first thing they're going to do is start to warm up their hands. We've got these balls on a rope that can be purchased at almost any sporting goods store. And our players, the receivers, will come out here. Running backs will use this. Almost all the skilled players on the team will use this drill where they're just working on their eyes and hands. And they'll just throw this ball back and forth. And they'll make different throws. They'll throw it high, throw it down low, and catch the balls in different positions. And they're just focusing on watching the ball into their hands. Okay, the first thing I want to go over as far as being a wide receiver is catching the football. It doesn't matter how fast you are, how quick you are, how big you are. If you can't catch the football, you're going to have a hard time playing wide receiver. Well, we emphasize 4 points in catching a football here at Florida State. They are see, catch, tuck, and cover. You've got to see the ball, catch the ball, tuck the ball, and cover the ball. Now, I'd like now to demonstrate those 4 points. Now, the first thing you do, seeing the ball. As I said, it doesn't matter how good a receiver he is. If I cover his eyes, he is not going to catch the football. So that's the point of seeing the football. So first, when the ball's thrown, he's going to watch the football into his hands. He's got his eyes on the ball. Now throw it down low. When he throws the ball down low, he sees his eyes go down to the football. Now I want our receivers to overemphasize this. Throw him a high ball one time. When the ball's thrown up high, I want to see the up under the chin of the wide receiver. I want to see his eyes up on the football. Throw him a pass down low. When the ball is thrown down low, I want to see his eyes down on the football. I should be able to see the top of his head. That lets me know his eyes are on the football. A lot of receivers keep your head up. Throw them a low ball and keep your head up. A lot of receivers won't watch the ball down, and this is what you'll see when they don't have their eyes on the football. So we're going to put a lot of emphasis on getting your eyes on the football. One of the things that I ask our receivers to concentrate on is hand position on the football. As you see the ball, we focused on the little black dot on the end of the football. In other words, if a ball is coming right at you and it's in a nice tight spiral, you'll see that white circle on the football, but right in the center of that circle is that little black dot, and that's what we're focusing on, catching the front end of the football. Now, as you watch Jason catch the ball, you'll see him freeze it for a second as he catches it. He's actually looking for the hand position that he has on the ball. Much like a basketball player shooting a basketball, we want to emphasize catching the ball in our fingers and not our palms. There's a lot of emphasis on soft hands. So you'll see, to have soft hands, you can't have the ball caught against the palms. So you'll see him freeze and actually look at his hand position on the football. The next part of catching a football is the tuck. He sees the ball, he catches it, he freezes it, he looks at his hand position, and now I want him to bring it down into a tuck position. Now we'll do this every day, and as they warm up, they'll practice tucking the ball under the right arm and under the left arm and having a feel for both. Now, one point on the tuck that we tell our receivers, Jason, if you'll turn sideways for this. We tell our receivers, if you're running a pass route that is going across the field, tuck the ball to the side of the quarterback. So if Jason is running a route across the field in this direction, he's going to tuck the ball to the side of the quarterback away from the hit out of the secondary. If you'll turn around and get it the other way. The same example with Jason running a route this way. He's going to tuck the ball to the side of the quarterback. That's why when you warm up, you must practice tucking the ball under both arms. Now, as you watch Jason work, you'll see that he's watching the football all the way into the tuck. We don't want them to take their eyes off of the football until the ball is tucked away. I want to just talk briefly about tucking the football away. There are 3 pressure points in tucking a football. One here, this end of the football with the hand, the next in the V of the armpit, and the third pressure point is where the forearm squeezes the ball against the rib cage. I want the receiver to squeeze the ball into the V of his armpit, and then with the forearm squeeze it against his rib cage so that the ball can't be knocked out or knocked out from behind. Now he's going to squeeze it firmly and hold it tight, and that's how we emphasize protecting the football after the catch. Last thing I want to go over on catching a football. You see the ball, he's watched the ball into his hand, he's tucked the ball away. Now when the wide receiver is running in a crowd, we want him to cover the ball with his free hand. He's squeezing the ball into his rib cage, he's going to cover it with the free hand when collisions, when he's around a lot of bodies. As we start practice and start getting into some of our moving drills and catching the ball, watching the ball into our hands, we'll start out with fade routes. Now the fade is a route where the ball is trying to drop over your outside shoulder. What we emphasize here, you tell a receiver to watch the ball into his hands. Well, if his hands are down low, it's hard for him to see the ball all the way in because the hands aren't in the vision. So we'll emphasize getting the hands up high or high hands on a fade catch. One more adjustment that we really work on here is as a receiver is running a crossing route, not all passes are perfectly thrown. We'd like the ball thrown 1 foot in front of the numbers, but often the ball's thrown behind. Well, in that case, we want the receiver to take his far arm, the farthest arm from the football, and reach it back and make the catch. Now, as he takes that far arm, that turns his shoulders and turns his head to where he can watch the ball into his hands. But we'll actually work on, as he runs across, taking the far arm and ripping it back to the ball to make the catch. One of the things you don't want your receivers doing is just turning around with one hand because it's really a lazy effort to make the catch. Always, again, emphasize 2 hands on the ball. After we've warmed up our hands and warmed up our legs with just some pat and goes or some fade routes, we start to get into some of our moving drills. What I'll do is I'll have our receivers line up in front of the goal post where we'll have a net and they'll jog across the goal post. And what we'll do is we'll throw them a series of high balls, a series of low balls, we'll throw passes that are behind them, and then we'll throw what we call crazy ball. So Jason and Chris are going to demonstrate first the high ball catch. Here we want them going up and catching the high ball where I'm actually looking to see if I can see up underneath their chin and make sure their eyes are on the football. Now we're going to the low ball catch where I'm watching again to see if the receiver's eyes are down on the football. If I can see the top of his head, I feel like I've got accomplished what I want to get accomplished. He should have his eyes down on the ball and watch it all the way into his tuck. And again, you're going to switch hands and tuck it under a different arm each time. There you go. That's a good job there. All right, the next drill that we'll do from here is a ball that's thrown behind the receiver. Again, emphasizing taking the forearm and ripping it back to the football. We want the shoulder turn and the head turn and the eyes to the ball. Never want the receiver to stick one hand back there, always 2. Emphasis on the far arm. That's a good catch there. The next thing we work on is just a bad ball type of, ball's been deflected, it's not spiraling, and he's really got to concentrate on hands, soft hands, because you don't know what part of the ball is going to hit the hands. It's really good if you can throw a good knuckleball with a football, but this is just end over end. When you watch Jason run his and catch the ball, you can barely hear the ball hit his hands. I've noticed several times when Chris goes, you can really hear that loud thump. And it's a good indication he's catching the ball too much in his palm and not out on his fingertips. All right, the next drill we're going to demonstrate is the bounce pass, where we actually bounce the ball off the ground and into the receiver's hands. And what that requires a receiver to do is have super concentration on that football and quick reaction of the hands. You can see how difficult this is. A lot of times the great catches are really just a great reaction, great eye-hand coordination out of the receiver. They're both working to catch the ball in the hand still, watching it in all the way to the tuck, just giving them a bad ball. Right, the next drill that we're going to work on here is the sideline drill. In college, you have to have 1 foot in. The receiver always has to be aware of the sideline. So as you'll watch Jason run this drill, we're going to kick the far leg and drag that toe, much like a first baseman does in baseball when reaching to catch the ball. But we're trying to get that extra 2 or 3 feet of reach with a ball that may be leading us out of bounds. Just like every drill, we're going to try to get 2 reps, 2 completions, 2 perfect executions of this drill, one direction, and then the coach will simply go to the other side and make the same throw. What he's trying to do is to kick that leg as high as he can and really stretch and drag that back toe and keep it in bounds as long as he can, keeping the toe on the ground. If you'll notice, Jason is always kicking the far leg, the leg away from the football up, and dragging the near leg. Now we're going to take our warm-up routine into our routes. We'll actually let the receiver release off a defensive back. We won't actively bump and run with the receiver, but we just want a defender out there so the receiver can visualize and work his footwork and then run a fade route. Again, emphasizing going up and making a catch, watching the ball into the hands and tucking the ball after the catch. The ball's thrown high, the receiver will always attack the ball. The next point of emphasis on a fade route, a drill that we'll actually do, is the receiver looking over his inside shoulder for the football, and the ball is thrown so far outside that his adjustment is to actually snap the head around and pick the ball up again in the air and catch the ball over the outside shoulder. Now that is a real tough adjustment because the receiver actually loses sight of the ball for a split second. So the emphasis on snapping the head around quickly and picking that ball up again. Another adjustment catch that we'll actually drill for a wide receiver on the fade route is the jump ball. In other words, I'm the wide receiver and Chris is the defensive back. I've beat him to the outside and I'm heading for the corner of the end zone or down the sideline on a deep ball. The quarterback throws a ball that we've got to go up high or attack up high and actually jump up and get. The emphasis for the wide receiver is to go up and catch the ball high and then throw the back to the defender, much like a rebounder in basketball. We're actually going to go up and attack the football, and as we come down, we're going to throw our back to the defender and tuck it away and protect the football. At Florida State, we use a 2-point stance. The main points of emphasis for the wide receiver is, first of all, you want to have about 85% of your weight on the front foot. All right? Now, we'll take a pretty good stagger with our back foot. The stagger is how far that back foot's back, and we want a pretty good stagger. Okay, I've got 85% of the weight on this front feet. Then I've got all the weight that's on the back foot on the front toes of the feet. We want the heel actually off the ground a little bit. Now, as you look at Jason, we use these points of emphasis. Knees over the toes, chest over the knees. So if you look at it from the side, you'll actually see, Jason, if you get your knees a little further forward, get that chest down and head up. You actually see, you could draw a straight line down through his shoulders, down through his chest, through his knee, and right over the toe. If you look right down his back, we almost have a perfect straight line from the heel of the receiver up through his shoulders. Now he can have a slight bend in the back leg if he wants. I really want him comfortable, but again, the main point is the weight on that front foot, and then with the back foot, the pressure on the toes or on the front end of the foot. Now we use a 2-point stance at Florida State, but if we were going to go, if I needed to put my receivers down in a three-point stance, our feet wouldn't change. We'd actually just drop the hand to the side of the foot that's back down to the ground. Now the whole key in this is to keep the head up, because you still have to have that vision downfield and try to keep that back flat as you can. When we get a defender in an off position, we've actually got room to release off the line of scrimmage with no bump and run situations. The receiver can relax his hand. But we see so much press coverage nowadays, or bump and run, when the defender gets up on the wide receiver, we actually want the receiver's hands up. If the receiver's hands are just dropped down against bump and run coverage, as soon as I release off the line of scrimmage, I'm beat, because I let the defender get up in my shoulder pads. So what we'll teach the receiver to do is to get his hands 6 inches higher than wherever the defender's hands are. If if the defensive back's hands were here, we actually want the receiver's hands up here. Okay? Now it's a little hand fight, fist fight at the line of scrimmage. So Chris is down in his stance. I'm looking where his hands are, so my hands go higher. When the ball snaps, I take off, he shoots his hands. Now I can knock his hand down as I release by. Now this is something we have to work on every day, at least 5 minutes a day here at Florida State. The one thing we found out, if you cannot defeat bump and run coverage, you're going to see it every snap. All right, the next thing I'd like to talk about is the release. Every route that we run is based on the takeoff route. We must threaten the defender or make him believe that we're running a takeoff, we're going deep. So every time that the receiver comes off the line of scrimmage, we have to give him an aiming point. The aiming point is the outside shoulder of the defensive back lined over him. So if you'll watch Jason release, he's going to release right at the outside shoulder of the defensive back. Boom. Good. If I'm a defensive back like Chris is, and I've got the receiver running downfield, we make this point about your release. If a defensive back is watching you and you're running downfield up high, what looks faster? If you're running high or get on down low? Down low. And the point is, we want to make that defensive back, if we're not fast, believe we are. So our emphasis in our release is firing out low and coming up slow. So as you watch Jason release at his aiming point, you're going to see him keep his shoulder pads down and his head up as he releases. Ready? Go. What you have to remember as a wide receiver, the most important thing that we must do is penetrate downfield. So one of the first things you look at a receiver doing on his release or his takeoff is taking false steps. Okay? Now Jason, first I want you to release and take a false step with your back foot. Set, go. Did you see him pick that back foot up? That's wasted motion. The next false step that he's going to take is with his front foot, meaning this is caused by having too much weight on the back foot. Set, go. We want to try to eliminate any of that false motion or false step that we can. Now we're going to talk just briefly on the release versus press. I'm going to give my receiver two options on his release. The first option is called get it now. In other words, if he feels like the leverage of the defensive back is going to allow him to just take off and go without making fakes and all that at the line of scrimmage, that's the first option that the receiver has. So Jason, just get him now. Boom. The next option that the receiver has versus press coverage is the jab step. And that's where I really just want the receiver to give him one good jab step opposite of the direction that he's going to release. So if he's going to release to the right, he's going to jab step to the left and then come back inside. All right, ready? Go. Jab, boom. We will always have our outside foot back in our stance. And the receiver cannot jab him inside with his outside foot back. So if you're going to have your receiver release outside, if you require your receiver to release outside and his outside foot is back, you must allow him to make a two-step move. And that's the next thing that we'll do. All right, nice and easy. Ready? Go. Boom, boom. There's your two steps. What you can see Jason do is, as he's in his stance with the outside foot back, there's no way he can jab him in with this step because we don't want our feet to cross over. So it now becomes a two-step move. He's here, jab him in, and boom, back outside. We have approximately 26 different pass routes that our receivers eventually must perfect and be able to execute. Today I'd like to spend most of my time going over our quick passing game, our three-step drop by the quarterback, the quick routes, the slant, what we call a run it route or a stop route, and then a little goal line route, which is basically a quick post corner route by the wide receiver. All right, the first route we're going to go over is the slant route. It's a 5-step route by the wide receiver downfield, again, releasing at the outside shoulder of the defensive back. The receiver will plant off of his outside foot or 5th step and break his route in at a 45-degree angle. Now, when I'm running drills and the receivers are running routes, we don't go on a verbal cadence. We go on the motion of the football. I don't even want the receivers to know the snap count. So as they're in their stance, they're actually watching the ball. And when I'm ready for them to run a route, I'll snap the ball and they go on that motion. All right, you ready? Boom. Boom, good. As you watch Jason release on this route and take his 5 steps, the basic rule is any inside route or inside break, the plant step will be with the outside foot. Any route that breaks outside, the plant step will be with the inside foot. All right, the next route we're going to go over in our quick game is what we call a run it route. It's basically an 8-yard stop route. A lot of receivers, a lot of teams will run this, and if they get a bump and run coverage, they'll convert this route or making an adjustment into a fade route. This is a route we call a run it because we're actually going to run the route no matter what type of coverage we get. Now, all we're trying to do, this route specifically for us is designed for bump and run coverage. We're trying to push the defender downfield hard on a takeoff move and then sit down in the route and stop as quickly as we can and get our head around to catch the football. All right, the last route I want to go over in our quick game is what we call our goal line route. It's actually a quick post corner or slant corner. The receiver is going to release downfield 3 steps, break it in at a 45-degree angle, plant off of his outside foot, and break it in at a 45-degree angle, and then break back out to the corner after a little 3-step slant. All right, Jason, if you would, go. There's the slant in, breaks it out, rolls it back underneath. All right, now let's go inside and look at some game tape where you can see these drills and pass routes that we've worked on today. All right, the first route we're going to look at is the slant route. This is the bump and run coverage we're talking about. The receiver at the top and the receiver at the bottom are both going to run slant routes. The ball is going to be thrown to the receiver up top as you watch. Now we'll show it in slow motion. He beats the defender inside. He started a slight angle. Quarterback hit him right on the money. Again, he pushes, gives him a little outside stick, gets upfield, and as soon as he gets inside, he breaks to a 45-degree angle. You'll catch the tail end from an end zone view. He'll come into your picture on the left. There's his angle. He's got separation from the defensive back. Quarterback hits him perfectly, and he just turns it up. Now we go to the fade route. We're going to run to the back corner of the end zone. Now the ball is not going to be thrown there. It's going to be thrown to his outside, but we're going to try to run that line or run that track and then adjust to the ball thrown to our outside. In this picture, the receiver up top and to the inside is going to be running the fade route. Gives him a little stick. He's pushing now for the corner of the end zone, looking over the inside shoulder, and he separates out at the end to make the catch. We'll get this from the end zone view. The basic rule on the fade or the takeoff is to try to leave the quarterback 5 yards to the outside to throw the ball. As you see the receiver, he's now separating outside and makes a nice one-handed catch. This is our run it route. And this is against probably the worst coverage that we could see to have this play called. But we get a soft cushion technique by the corner. There's a no conversion rule for the wide receiver, so the route's on no matter what technique he plays. But it's well executed cut and a well thrown ball, and it's a fairly simple 7-8 yard gain. All right, there's 2 blocking assignments that our receivers will have to execute here, because we're still going to run the ball, approximately 40-45% of the time. But the 2 assignments they'll have is, one, a man-over rule where the receiver will block man over. It's that simple. And this receiver will block man over. But oftentimes on our outside runs, we'll give the receiver a two-man responsibility. In other words, he's going to have a read block. It's either going to be man over or the support coming from the inside, which in this case, the receiver has to read the coverage. After the ball snap, he releases, and he's got to block the first threat to support the run. In this case, it's going to be the inside defender. So if you just focus on the receiver up top, the corner backs off of him, safety comes up to support the run, and the receiver reacts in to block the run support defender. We want to hit him up high with square shoulder pads and basically just seal him inside right here. The blocking rules for the backside receiver is always man over, and we'll normally cut block the defender, which you'll see a good job of right there. We try to do it as safely as we can, putting our outside shoulder on the thigh of the defensive back. Here's a good picture here where we're inside the 10-yard line and we've taken the read assignment off for the wide receiver, and it's a good picture of where you have an unblocked safety making a tackle. Whereas if you leave the rule on and let the receiver come in and block the safety, you have a potential touchdown. Here's a good job by the receiver up top. He has a read block assignment. The safety, the corner is the first threat by alignment because of the depth of the safety. So in this picture, the safety stays back and the corner stays up, and that puts the receiver's read to block the corner, which he does. And again, I emphasize that all we are trying to accomplish on our blocks is position. We'd like the receiver to stay square on his block with his head on the outside shoulder of the defensive back and just get in a little pigeon fight with him. What I have pictured here is the wide receiver route tree of all the routes that we run at Florida State. This will be in the receiver's notebook that I'll give out every fall to the players. They can visually see the routes and how the progression goes. And when we're teaching routes, we start with the short routes and work down the tree to the deeper routes. All right, as I go through teaching this or introducing our routes to our receivers, as I take a freshman, a new kid, we're going to start teaching our routes from the shortest routes and work up our tree to the deeper routes. Some routes we consider no-brainer routes. In other words, a shallow cross route is a 3-yard route across the middle of the field. An arrow route is a 3-yard route towards the sideline. We go up the tree, we'll start with the shallow cross and progress to the bounce route, which climbs to 3.5, 4 yards deep. Then we work to our crossing routes as we work deeper downfield. We'll start across the field at a depth of 12 yards at the far hash and even deeper, 15 yards across the field at a far hash. We work up the tree here. We work to a 4-step speed out, a 3 to 5 step slant. As we work down the tree, the run it routes, which we work off a yardage, which is 8 yards deep. Again, if you wanted to put steps to it, it would be a 7-step route. To our bench route, which is a 6-step route. As you work down the tree, we now work to the choice route, which is a 10-yard route. And then you work the goal line to go back even further, 3 steps up, 3 steps on the slant, and roll to about 12 yards on the goal line route. As you progress even further, we're now working to our intermediate routes, our 16-yard routes. That's the curl route, which is at a maximum depth of 16, and I've got this arrow coming back because we'll come back to the ball. Then you've got your squaring, which again is at 16 yards, and we'll stay 16 straight across the field. To our post corner, which the break point is approximately 16 yards deep, but rolls to a deeper depth. Now, this flag route, again, that's going to be about the same depth as the post corner at the end of the route, but this break is around the choice route depth. Then you get on down to your 2 deep routes, which are your post and your takeoff, and as you can see in red, it's almost the same thing, the fade route. Again, as we talked about out on the field today, The routes in red are the routes that we discussed out on the practice field and the routes we ran. The 5-step slant route, the run it route, which is a non-conversion route. We run it against all coverages, loose, bump, press, 2 deep, 3 deep, etc. And then the slant corner, which we call a goal line route. That's a 3 steps up, 3 steps in on the slant, roll back out to about 12 yards deep. And then finally, the fade route, which again is a bump and run, quick throw by the quarterback route. Those are the routes we feel like you must be able to execute to defeat bump and run coverage. We feel like it's too much of a guessing game to get into the deeper square ends, post corners against bump and run, because you never know in bump and run if it's a zone technique or a blitz. And if it's blitz, it's too hard to protect for your quarterback for these deeper routes. Coaches, if you do not do a route tree, I strongly recommend that you do, because I think if your players can visually see the routes that you run, I think the more information you can give them, the more it will help them learn how to run the routes and how you expect them to look. I think one of the things that excite me the most about coaching wide receivers here at Florida State are the great plays that these guys make week in and week out. I think you'll see that as you look at film, and what I've tried to demonstrate here today in this tape, is that the great plays are not made just because these guys are good football players, but because we stress the fundamentals of the game. The great plays that you'll make, the jump balls, the positioning by the wide receiver, all go back to the fundamentals of timing on jumps, releases, seeing the ball, catching the ball, tucking the ball, attacking the football. We're very fortunate here in that we're able to pick and choose our players, the receivers that come and play football here. But in high school, that's often not the case. But wide receivers, coaches, any of you can develop into great receivers, and coaches, you can help teach these young men how to be great receivers by simply stressing the fundamentals that I've gone over here today in this tape.
I think you can look at Jeff and tell he got all of his looks and from his mother, but now remember, he got all that great athletic ability from me now. Don't think he got that from his mother. And but the thing about it, coaches and you young players, we can give you these drills, we can tell you how to do them, but if you don't go out and work on them, it's not going to be any good. I don't care, the great players we've had at Florida State and long, we've been so fortunate to have some great ones here. Buddy, we did not let up on them. When they came to Florida State, I don't care. I think the better they were, the harder we worked them. We established a work ethic at Florida State that we're going to work harder than anybody else we play, and you're going to be better prepared physically to go out on that field and play than your opponent. And so we worked them hard. So you must realize when a coach is driving you and working you and teaching you, you want to pay attention to what he says and what we call surrender to his will. Surrender to his will. Now, what do we mean by that? You do exactly what he wills for you to do. Well, I'll tell you the big reason I like to see kids playing football nowadays, and a lot of it's patriotism. Our kids need discipline. They need discipline. Sometimes they're not getting in the home like they used to, you know. And so football helps discipline a kid, whether he wants to be or not. Now, what do I mean by discipline? I mean, he's going to have to do something he don't want to do. I don't think he enjoys running those dashes up and down the field and doing those push-ups and doing those sit-ups and get out in that hot sun where it's 100 degrees, working 2 times a day in full pads and sweating and going through the torture that these young men go through unless they are disciplined, you know. So I think all of our young people need discipline today, and I think football helps give this discipline. Now, does that mean they're all going to turn out good? Oh no, because you have to make decisions in all your life of good or bad, you know, and I hope you'll make the good decisions. But at least in competitive sports, you must be disciplined, and that's one of the main reasons I'm glad that all my sons played college football and high school football, you know, because it has shown them that, hey, there's going to be setbacks, there's going to be awards, there's going to be good, there's going to be bad, but no matter what happens, you got to keep on going. I had a great learning experience early in my career. I have 4 sons, and I was able to coach all 4 of them. All 4 of them came to where I was coaching, and I was able to coach my sons. Now, until you coach your own son, you don't realize everything about these young men. that you need to realize. When I saw my sons, they all had injuries. I remember one of them laying on the ground with a broken leg. I can remember one getting knocked out in a ball game where he had a punctured lung, and we had to rush him to the hospital and wondered if he was going to be able to breathe, you know. I've seen them laying on the ground with blood coming out of their nose and out of their ears and unconscious and wondering if they were okay, and it's my son down there, you know. And that helped me because now I realize that every player I coach, every boy I coach is somebody's son, you know. He's got a mama somewhere that loves him dearly, and that I have a responsibility to help take care of these young men, you know. And I think it's we coaches need to realize these young men we coach, they're going to look up to us more than any other man in the world. I sometimes wonder if boys don't look up more highly to their coach than they do their own father. Now, I had a great father. I had a great dad when I was coming up. Boy, he was just a wonderful, precious dad that I loved tremendously. But you know what? If my high school coach had said, try to run through that wall over there, I think I'd have tried it. Now, if my daddy had told me to try to run through that wall over, I think I'd have gone to mama and tried to talk him out of it, you know. But that's the respect that coaches, the impact that coaches have over these young men. And coaches, we're accountable. We're going to be accountable for these young men. You know, to me, one of these days when they meet their maker, you know, we better be sure that we help lead them in the right direction instead of causing them to fail. Well, now just remember now, there's not about 1 out of 100 players that's going to actually go on to college and play football. Don't think everybody is. You know, everybody like to. So most, again, about 99% are not going to go to college and play football or go into professional football. But how's football going to help you? Well, number one, again, I think the discipline part of it is so important. You know, you're learning that you must do this. You must be on time for meetings. You must study your playbook. You must know what, and you know, one of the greatest things about it is teamwork. You simply cannot win without teamwork. You can have the best football players in the country on your ball club, but unless you play as a team, you're not going to make it. You young men, remember this. If you're going to be a winning football player at junior high, high school, college, or pro, you've got to put the team first. You got to put your buddy first. You got to be able to bleed for him. I'm going to fight for him. I'm going to block so hard the play will go for him. You know, it's a team thing, and that's one of the biggest things that our young people need to learn today. Is everything is I, me. What can you give me? What can you give me? And what can you do for me? Football doesn't teach that. Football teaches what can you do for your team, and it's something every young man and I wish every young lady could go through. Well, I think if there's any legacy that I would like to leave when I'm through coaching, would be that you can be a great coach and be a winning coach and still be honest and still do it right. We've got so many coaches that have been that way all their life. And then we have some that are not. But I would want every young boy to say, well, Coach Bowden did not cheat. Coach Bowden was not abusive to the kids. Coach Bowden did not curse the kids. Coach Bowden did not beat the kids. Coach Bowden treated the players just like he would his own children. That's what I've tried to do. I try to teach my players and handle them exactly like I would my own children. Now, when my children were coming up, I spanked them when they were bad. You know, I disciplined them when they were bad. But I rewarded them when they were good, and I let them know I love them. That's one thing I think we coaches need to do. Let these young men know that we love them. And the reason we work them hard and the reason we discipline them is because we want them to be the best. You see, there's actually love there behind discipline. So that's what I would want people to remember me of. He is a guy that had great success. I don't want to be known he's a loser. I would like for him to say he was a guy that had great success, and he did it the way it ought to be done. He didn't cheat and didn't take shortcuts. It's been a pleasure for me to be part of this Legends of the Game, and I hope you young men and coaches will get a lot out of it and continue the great game of football. I think it will continue to get better and better and better if you young coaches and you young boys coming up will commit yourself and be dedicated to it and keep your priorities in the right order in life. Football is supposed to be a game. Coaches, try to make it fun if you can. I know it's hard to do, but try to make it fun for these guys. And you young men, try to enjoy the game and have fun with it. Don't make it a life and death situation. You know, if you're going to play the game, you're going to get yourself whipped. You ain't going to play it and win all your games. You're going to get whipped. So that's what the game is, see? Learn from those mistakes and then correct them and don't make them again. Now, that might be one of the greatest things you can learn in life.
I hope you've enjoyed this tape made by Bobby Bowden, my good friend, and his son Jeff. Bobby has had a tremendous career at first West Virginia, Stanford, and then Florida State, and has consistently been right at the top of the college football echelons, and I think has done a tremendous job. And of course, he's very well known as a great passing coach. So he was well qualified to do the job of talking about receivers. This Legends of the Game video is one in a series of instructional tapes made for coaches, athletes, parents, and fans of the game of football. There are a total of 10 tapes available covering all aspects of football. We sought out the best coaches in the country in order to produce top quality instructional tapes. If you would like to order additional videos or receive more information about the Legends of the Game series, call 800-230-3831 or write us at Coaches Direct in Lincoln, Nebraska. You may also fax us at area code 402-465-8849, or you can visit us on our website at www.coachesdirect.com. Thank you for your interest in the game of football.